I never thought grief could change the way I saw my own parents, but it did. My name is Ava, I'm 34, and last year I lost my 8-year-old son, Ethan, in a car accident that shattered every part of my life. He was my whole world. Bright, funny, and gentle. The kind of kid who made everyone smile just by being around. The accident happened on a rainy Saturday night. I was driving home from a friend's house when another car ran a red light. Ethan was asleep in the back seat. I woke up in the hospital 2 days later to the kind of silence that tells you everything before anyone speaks. I remember screaming until my throat bled when the doctor told me he didn't make it. I wanted to die too. My husband, Mark, was destroyed. We'd been married 10 years, and Ethan was our only child. The first few weeks after the funeral were a blur. Friends brought food, neighbors sent flowers, but my parents, well, they didn't come. My mom texted me the morning of the service, saying, "We're so sorry, sweetheart, but the restaurant is short-staffed. We'll visit later this week." I stared at the message in disbelief. I couldn't process that they were choosing work over their grandson's funeral. My father didn't even message me. I waited through the entire service thinking, maybe they'd show up late. Maybe there'd been some misunderstanding. But they never did. Mark's parents sat in the front row with me, holding my hands the whole time while my own parents' seat stayed empty. After the service, I went home numb. Days later, my mother called like nothing had happened. "We sent flowers," she said casually. "Did you get them?" I couldn't even speak. "You skipped your grandson's funeral," I said finally. "You didn't even call to say you were sorry." She sighed. "Ava." We were dealing with a crisis at the restaurant. You know how important the investors are. We couldn't just walk away. "He was your grandson," I screamed. "He's gone, Mom. You'll never see him again?" She went quiet, then said in that cold tone she always used when she wanted to sound reasonable, "Crying won't bring him back. You need to stay strong." That was the last time we spoke for months. I blocked their numbers, deleted their emails, and told Mark I never wanted to see them again. He agreed. He'd never liked how they treated me. Always critical. Always reminding me how I'd thrown away the chance to run their restaurant empire by choosing a quieter life in the suburbs. I thought cutting them off would bring peace, but grief doesn't work that way. It doesn't fade, it just shifts. I spent months waking up in the middle of the night, hearing phantom laughter, seeing Ethan's toys still scattered around the living room. Therapy helped, slowly. Mark went back to work after 3 months, but I couldn't. I just didn't have it in me. Then, about 6 months after the funeral, my parents reached out again, but not to apologize. My sister, Chloe, called first. She was 28, my parents' golden child. She'd always been the one who could do no wrong, and I didn't blame her for it. She played the role they wanted. Social, charming, and always perfectly dressed. "Hey," she said awkwardly over the phone. "Mom and Dad want to talk to you about something." "About what?" I asked flatly. "It's about Ethan's trust." My blood ran cold. "What about it?" "They think maybe, since he's gone, that money could be used for something meaningful. Like the wedding." I was silent for a long moment, trying to process what I was hearing. "Are you telling me Mom and Dad want my dead son's trust fund for your wedding?" Chloe stammered. "It's not like that. They just thought it would be a nice way to honor him. You know, bring the family together again." I started laughing, a bitter, broken laugh that turned into tears. Honor him. They didn't even come to his funeral. "Ava, please, don't make this harder than it has to be," she said, her voice turning sharp. "It's just sitting there. You and Mark don't need it anymore." I hung up on her. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely breathe. That trust, $850,000, was Ethan's future. It was money Mark and I had saved since he was born, plus an inheritance from my late grandmother that my parents had insisted go into his name. It wasn't theirs to touch. The next day, I got an email from my father. No apology, no compassion. Just a business-style message outlining how redistributing the funds could support the family legacy. That's when I realized My parents hadn't just skipped Ethan's funeral because they were busy. They didn't come because they didn't care. And now, they were trying to profit from his death. When I read that email, something inside me broke. My father's message wasn't just heartless. It was calculated. He wrote things like, "It's only right that Chloe's marriage, which will carry the family's name forward, receives proper support." He even attached a draft of how the trust funds could be repurposed through the family foundation. It made me sick. I forwarded it to Mark, and he called me within seconds. "Iva, do not respond," he said, his voice calm but angry. "They're testing you. If you give them an inch, they'll take everything. They can't actually touch it, right?" I asked, panicked. "No," he said firmly. "It's in Ethan's name. It goes to charity if we don't reassign it. They have no legal claim, but they'll try to guilt you into it." He was right. The next day, my mother showed up at my house unannounced. I hadn't seen her since before the accident. I opened the door and barely recognized her. Perfect hair, perfect clothes, same cold smile. "Ava," she said softly. "You look thin. Are you eating?" "What do you want?" I asked, blocking the doorway. "Please," she said, clasping her hands. "I just want to talk. Can I come in?" Against my better judgment, I let her. She looked around the house like she was inspecting a rental property. "It's smaller than I remember," she said absently. "But cozy." I didn't bother replying. She sat down on the couch and crossed her legs delicately. "I know things have been difficult," she began. "We all miss Ethan terribly." I laughed bitterly. "You didn't even come to his funeral." Her face twitched, but she kept her composure. "We've explained that, Ava. The restaurant was in crisis. We had to keep the staff paid. You know how much responsibility your father carries." "I lost my son," I said quietly. "You lost nothing." She ignored that and smiled again. "Anyway, that's not why I'm here. Chloe's wedding is coming up, and she really wants the whole family involved. It would mean so much if you could help." "You mean give you money?" I said flatly. "Specifically Ethan's money." She hesitated, then said, "It's just sitting there. Chloe's wedding will be a beautiful event. Something positive after all this tragedy. Wouldn't you want your son remembered in that way?" I felt my nails dig into my palms. "You want to remember my son by using his college fund to buy champagne?" Her eyes flashed. "Don't be dramatic. It's a family investment, Ava. You've been so emotional lately. Maybe if you reconnected, you'd feel better." That was it. I stood up and said, "Get out." "Excuse me." "Get out." She stood, her expression turning icy. "You always were ungrateful. We built everything you have, your education, your life, and this is how you repay us, by hoarding money that could benefit your sister." "That money was Ethan's," I said through tears. "And you don't get to touch a cent." She looked at me for a long moment, then said, "You'll regret this. Family always comes first, Ava. Even when you forget that." And then she left. I collapsed on the couch, shaking. Mark came home an hour later and found me crying. When I told him what happened, he didn't say a word. He just held me. Later that night, I forwarded every message from my parents to our lawyer, just in case. For the next few weeks, things went quiet. I started to think maybe they'd finally backed off. But then Chloe called again, sobbing. "Ava, please, Mom and Dad are furious. They said if you don't help, they'll cut me off. They're threatening to cancel the wedding." "So?" I said coldly. "Then don't get married on their money." "You don't understand," she cried. "They've already spent deposits. I'll lose everything. Please, Ava." Ethan wouldn't want the family torn apart. Hearing his name from her lips made me see red. "Don't you dare use his name to manipulate me," I snapped. "You're marrying a guy who drives a Porsche and wears designer suits. You'll survive without my son's trust fund." She went quiet, then whispered, "You've changed." "No," I said. "I finally see who you all are." A week later, I got served legal papers. My parents were actually trying to file a claim to re-sign unused family assets from the trust. It was ridiculous, and our lawyer shut it down immediately. But the damage was done. My family had officially turned my son's death into a transaction. When Chloe's wedding photos hit social media months later, I saw the lavish ceremony, floral arches, fireworks, custom gowns. My parents smiled in every picture, like they hadn't destroyed what little was left of me. And then I saw something that made me feel physically sick. A small plaque on one of the tables that said, "In loving memory of Ethan." They'd used my son's name as a decoration. I screamed when I saw it. Mark deleted the photos before I could throw my phone across the room. That night, I made a decision. I was done letting them use Ethan to make themselves look good. I didn't care about blood anymore. I cared about peace, and I was ready to take it back. After seeing those pictures, I stopped sleeping. I'd already cut them out of my life, but now I felt like I was haunted by them. Every time I opened social media, there was another tag, another family post about Chloe's beautiful wedding made possible by love and unity. It made me sick. They'd erased Ethan's memory from their lives when it mattered, then used his name as a prop when it benefited them. I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. The following week, my mother tried to call me again. I ignored her at first, but she kept leaving voicemails. "Ava, the wedding was wonderful," she said cheerfully. "You should have come. Everyone missed you. Then, you've really hurt your sister, Ava. She just wanted to share her happiness with you. And finally, it's time to move past this bitterness. Family is forever." That last message pushed me over the edge. Family isn't forever when it only exists on their terms. I decided I wasn't gonna let them rewrite the story. I sat down that night and wrote a post on my private Facebook. One that only close friends and family could see. I told the truth. I wrote about how my parents skipped my son's funeral because they had a business meeting. How they tried to take his trust fund to pay for a wedding. How they pretended to honor him only after I refused to give them money. I wasn't cruel or dramatic. I just wrote facts. And I ended it with, "I don't need a family that values money over love. Ethan deserved better, and so do I." I hit post and logged off. The next morning, my phone exploded. Messages from old relatives, distant cousins, even former employees of my parents' restaurant group started flooding in. Some were supportive. Others were shocked. Apparently, my parents had spent years painting themselves as the perfect family. My post cracked that image in half. Chloe called me crying that afternoon. "Why would you do that?" she sobbed. "You embarrassed them. People are talking." "Good," I said coldly. "Let them talk." "You don't understand," she said. "They're threatening to shut down everything. The restaurants, the events, all of it. You're ruining their reputation?" "They ruined it themselves," I said. I just told the truth. A few days later, I got a letter. Hand-delivered, of course, from my father. It was written like a business memo, accusing me of defamation and malicious interference with family affairs. It was laughable. Really. I didn't even respond. Instead, I printed it, framed it, and hung it in my office as a reminder of what I was finally free from. But the fallout didn't stop there. A local news outlet picked up my post after a cousin shared it publicly. They didn't use names, but everyone in our town knew who it was about. Customers started boycotting my parents' restaurants. For the first time, they were being held accountable, not by me, but by the people who'd once admired them. My mom showed up at my house again a week later, pounding on the door until I opened it. She was furious. "You've destroyed us?" she shouted. "Your father is sick over this." Chloe's humiliated. "Are you happy?" I stared at her, completely calm. "You destroyed yourself when you skipped Ethan's funeral." "We made one mistake," she snapped. "You're acting like we killed him." That sentence hit me like a punch to the chest. "Get out," I said quietly. "Ava, get out." She glared at me, eyes burning, and for the first time, I saw her mask slip. She wasn't the powerful woman she pretended to be. She was desperate. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "We're still your family." "No," I said, shutting the door in her face. "You're strangers who share my last name." I leaned against the door, shaking, tears spilling down my face. It didn't feel good. It just felt empty. But it was done. I thought that would be the end of it. But of course, my parents didn't know how to back down. A few weeks later, I got an email from their accountant asking for updated information regarding the trust's charitable disbursement. It turns out they were trying to redirect it again, this time under the guise of Memorial Foundation. That, surprise, would be run through their restaurant's branding. I immediately contacted my lawyer and had the trust officially transferred into a child lost nonprofit's name. The check went straight to funding therapy programs for grieving parents. It was what Ethan would have wanted, helping others like us. That night, I sat in Ethan's old room, holding his favorite stuffed dinosaur, and whispered, "They can't hurt you anymore, baby, and they'll never touch what's yours." It wasn't peace, not fully. But it was something close. A few days later, Chloe texted me for the last time. "You went too far. You've torn this family apart." I stared at the message for a long time, then replied, "No. I just stopped pretending it was whole." And I blocked her number for good. After blocking Chloe, I thought the silence would feel lonely, but it didn't. It felt like I could finally breathe again. For years, I had lived in the shadow of my parents' expectations, showing up to every event, every dinner, every performance of their perfect family act. Without them, my world was quieter, but it was real. I focused on rebuilding myself. I threw myself into my work, helping other grieving parents through the foundation. I started up in Ethan's name. I started volunteering at local hospitals, sitting with mothers who'd lost their children and just needed someone to listen. Every time I helped someone smile through the pain, I felt like Ethan was with me, like he'd left me a purpose. One afternoon, months later, I was standing in the foundation's small office when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Ava," a hesitant voice asked. "It's me, Sophie. I work for your parents." My heart tightened. "What do you want?" "I probably shouldn't be calling you," she said softly. "But I thought you should know, they're selling everything. The restaurants, the properties, everything's falling apart." I didn't say anything for a long moment. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," she said, "I think they finally realize what they did. I heard your mom crying yesterday. She said she wished she'd gone to your son's funeral." I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to believe it. Another part knew regret doesn't always equal change. "Thank you," I said finally. "But it's too late." That night, I took a long drive out to the coast, the same beach where I'd scattered some of Ethan's ashes. The sunset was a deep orange, the waves calm, and for once, I didn't feel that ache in my chest that used to live there constantly. I sat on the sand for hours, watching the tide rise and fall, thinking about everything that had happened. Losing Ethan had broken me in ways I didn't know could be repaired. But surviving my parents' betrayal had taught me that love, real love, wasn't something you begged for. It was something you built, even if you had to start from the ashes. Over the next year, the foundation grew faster than I ever expected. Donations poured in, not just from locals but from people all over the country who had seen my story online. They called me brave, strong, an inspiration. But I didn't feel like any of that. I just felt like a mom who refused to let her son be forgotten. One morning, I got a letter in the mail, no return address, just my name in my mother's neat handwriting. I almost threw it away, but curiosity won. Inside was a single page. "Ava," it began. "You were right. We failed you in ways I can never fix. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know. We finally sold the last restaurant. The money is going toward paying off our debts. Nothing is left. Maybe that's what we deserve. I hope someday you'll find peace. Love, Mom." I read it twice, then set it down. There was no anger left in me anymore, just quiet acceptance. I didn't reply. Some doors needed to stay closed. A few weeks later, I gave a speech at a charity gala for the foundation. It was the biggest event we'd ever hosted. Hundreds of people were there. Doctors, donors, grieving families. As I stood at the podium, I looked out at them and thought about how far I'd come from that day at the funeral, standing alone while my parents chose profit over presence. Grief doesn't disappear, I said. It changes shape. It becomes part of who you are. But it can also be the start of something beautiful if you let it. My son taught me that love doesn't end. It transforms. The audience was silent for a moment. Then applause filled the room. I smiled, tears running down my cheeks. But this time they weren't from pain. They were from pride. I left the gala that night feeling lighter than I had in years. When I got home, I lit a candle in Ethan's room and whispered, "We did it, baby. You changed lives." It's been 3 years since that night. My parents never reached out again, and I never went looking for them. Sometimes I wonder where they are, if they still tell themselves they did what was best. But I don't carry the weight of that anymore. I have my peace, my purpose, and the quiet strength that comes from surviving people who were supposed to love you but didn't know how. Every now and then, I still visit that beach. I bring flowers, sit by the waves, and talk to Ethan about everything that's happened. The people we've helped, the children we've honored, the families who found hope again. And when the wind picks up, carrying my words out over the water, I swear I can almost hear him laugh. Not the laughter of the baby I lost, but the echo of love that never really left. They skipped his funeral, they betrayed his memory, but in the end, they couldn't take away the legacy he left behind. They lost everything trying to buy love. I found everything by finally understanding what love really means.